What's up? It's your boy Tommaso
and Alessandro,
and we're back with another sample breakdown. Today we're showing you a sample from our Horn Anthems Volume 1 sample pack, and it's titled Entry. A little bit about the Horn Anthems pack. Volume 1 is by far our best-selling sample pack ever, and when we created the pack we felt like this particular sample is like the money sample. We made this and we thought like there's nobody in this world that cannot make a banger with this particular sample. And we figured we'll just show you how we put it together. With the Horn Anthem Sample Pack series, we get a lot of questions from people asking like, how do we put it together? How do we make it sound the way it sounds? Like, how do you make it sound so big? And you know, what plugins do you use? Without further ado, let's get into it so we can show you how we put it together.
Let's go. So this composition is in D sharp minor, and the first thing we have is the D sharp minor chord, and it's played in the second inversion. So you have this note up here in the melody, then you have this little, and then it goes to G sharp minor and C sharp major and back. Then you have this melody thing again, and now we go to B major and C sharp major. It always goes to this chord, then basically does something, and then it comes back here. Then the first part loops again. And instead of going back here, it goes to the same chord up here, but with a B in the bass, which turns this to a B major 7. And then it goes back to the D sharp minor chord. What makes this composition sound good is how it's orchestrated and how it sounds like very big. We made this composition over 2 years ago, and revisiting it today made us realize how simple it actually is. I would say we start with some of the brass VSTs we used. So here we have this saxophone and horn section, and together they sound like this. This is the brass ensemble from the Contact Factory library.
It doesn't get any less fancy than that.
Yeah, really. And here we have the melody up here and the bass. So this plays everything. And then we have the saxophone section, which also comes from the Factory library. It plays only the melody, yeah.
Individual sounds so plasticky
and
fake.
It sounds a bit whack actually.
Yeah. But it's funny how within the composition it actually fulfills a purpose that, you know, helps to make it sound fat.
In the verse the brass plays staccato. Let's just listen to the verse real quick. And the staccato patch is the same Contact Factory brass ensemble, and you just pick the staccato articulation and play the chords, which we talked about earlier. And then we have a violin section. This is the violin ensemble, Contact Factory library as well. And also plays the melody. This is the sustain patch, but I think I turned down the attack a bit, or otherwise they would just sound very blurry. I layered the melody, but this is already rendered, but I can show you the plugin. It's an East-West Quantum Leap plugin. This is the 30-piece string section. And the reason why I rendered this is because you can only reach this E up here. And if I want to go any higher, I play the melody a bit lower, and I render it, and then I transpose the audio. It's not super important if this sounds really authentic, because it's just a layer and it adds those overtones. This sounds like this together. What usually achieves that is like a big bass and strings and brass. And if you listen to modern like orchestra compositions, there isn't a lot of woodwinds going on. So it's most of the time strings and brass playing like big chords and adding a lot of bass to that, which is the next thing actually. We have the bass right here. First of all, we have the low strings. This is the same patch that we talked about earlier. Just plays the bass notes. And then we have a bass. This is trillion. The patch is called Covered Chorus Bass. This is like one of my go-to sounds.
Yeah.
You can play it in that low register without it sounding too bad.
Very versatile.
So has a very percussive attack and then it dies down rather quickly. It's like layered under the orchestra and it just makes the bass strings sound a bit fatter.
Yeah, the filter modulation takes out the higher frequency and part of the bass sound. So you only have that attack, so it does like wow, and then it goes down.
Yeah. And this is all the VSTs together. And then lastly we have this sound here, but it's very low. You can see it's at -19. It's an electric piano that just plays all the chords. And I like using this particular patch for that. It's the Rhodes LA Custom Old Sampler. It has very, very little high end. As you can see here, it's basically just mid frequencies. And it's nice to layer your instruments with, so that you can just give them a bit more body, I guess. I like to play this patch really legato, as you can see here. This fills up the empty space between notes nicely and fattens the sound without being very audible. I use this in beats a lot. If I have a feeling that the elements sound nice, but they're not as glued together, I use this patch from Keyscape and I throw it in and it does a great job of solving all these problems. Lastly, we have these percussion sounds right here. These are just one-shots. You have a kick and a timpani. They are supposed to be perceived as one sound. And on the first downbeat, every 4 bars, you have the gong, which makes it sound even heavier. Now we play all the percussions and VSTs.
So at this point, the sample is like 80 to 90% there. It sounds cool, but it doesn't quite sound as realistic as it could be. And that's where the real instruments come in. For all 4 volumes, we used the same trumpet and trombone player. His name is Cam Henderson. Shout out to Cam, he's amazing. He's the one that re-records everything that we send him. Most of the time we leave the VST horns in there because the combination just sounds great together. So as you can see, he recorded trumpets, 4 takes of them, and they sound like this. The first take is the lower one. And then there's the harmony.
Yeah.
And the higher one.
The higher melody, yeah. And this is the same.
So the third and the fourth are basically the same thing doubled in unison. So you have a lower take and a harmony and the higher octave and a double of the higher octave. So let's get into the editing here. When you're working with real horn recordings, there's usually a little bit more EQing, especially when you're compared to VST plugins, because they're already cleaned up quite heavy, which makes it easy to use them, but also that's where a lot of the realistic feel of it gets lost. However, you don't want every detail of the horn recording to be in there, because then 9 times out of 10 it will just get too harsh in the upper frequency. Yeah, let's get into it. First thing that we have here is the Sunset Studio Reverb. This is a plugin by T-Rex, exactly. So you can pair different reverb types and room settings with this particular reverb plugin, which helps you to achieve a reverb sound that sounds appropriate or realistic for the instruments that you're trying to throw this reverb on. In this case, we use the chamber reverb.
And What's nice about this plugin is you have the dry and wet fader.
Yeah, so you can blend them to, you know,
exactly.
to your liking.
So you can use it like a send effect even though it's an insert.
Next thing we got here is knock, and I'd say in this instance is a little bit repurposed because this is usually dedicated to drums. Yeah. But we use the saturation knob in order to add harmonics to it. And also the air fader, which adds high end and a little bit of soft clipping. The way this is set, we went for a less clean and more saturated sound. So you have without it and with it. It's subtle, but you can definitely feel it and hear it. This just gets rid of everything that's above 18K basically. And the last bit is, you know, a little bit of EQ in the 10K range just to get rid of a little bit of the harshness. That's what I was talking about. You have a lot of those little things that peek out that you want to control when you're working with real horns. The individual ones, they don't have any editing on them, so they were all routed into one group, and then the group does the editing for all 4 takes.
But the individual sounds are panned.
43 to the left, 21 to the right, 60 to the left, 53. So, you know, that's how you get a nice, wide, clean sound. And lastly, we have the trombones, which in this case are 3 takes. So let's listen to the first one. Second take, harmony.
And this one sounds really nice. This adds a lot of drama.
Third voice. Okay, and all 3 together. Oh yeah. So in terms of editing, same reverb. So we can basically put it in the same room as the trumpets. And a little bit of EQ again. Here we're taking away
some of the
muddiness in the mid-range and boosting quite a bit in the high end. Compared to the trumpets, the trombones don't have as much information when you play it up in this frequency.
Exactly.
You know, spectrum. So you just add a little bit to it. And if you combine the trumpets and the trombones, the real recordings, it sounds like this. Before we listen to the full thing, let's just listen to the real trumpets and trombones in combination with the VST trumpets and trombones. So let me take out the horn layer here and bring it in. So even though we said this here and this here sounds kind of plasticky, which it definitely does, if you combine them, they actually fulfill their purpose and sound really good in combination with the real horns. And also if you take the real horns out, obviously by themselves they wouldn't sound as nice. And like I said, both together just sounds awesome.
Let's bring the bass.
Strings.
Percussion.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this one, but this the vocal patch is also a plugin from East West. When we compose things, we take this as a demo sound, and then we either leave it in there or we'll have other people re-sing it. In this case, we literally just went with the plugin. Sounds cool in this context.
And the trombones are layering the staccato here.
And also in the second part of the verse, the trumpets also play in staccato. And the trombones play legato notes again.
It's the melody in the lower octave.
Yeah. The brass over here is basically the same patch.
but an octave higher. Yeah.
Exactly. And then combine with the real.
Just elevates the verse.
Yeah.
And the saxophone section is also playing in the second part of the verse.
All of these little variations make it so that you have the feeling where it's going to the next level, and then when it gets to the chorus of the sample, it's basically the same thing as the intro. It just feels like you arrived somewhere, and now it just sounds larger than life.
We talked about this in an earlier episode as well. You don't want to add more and more instruments and melodies to your composition, which is kind of a rookie mistake. What you want to do instead is you want to take the material that's there and you remix it every 8 bars, if that makes sense. I think especially in hip-hop music, it's good to keep it simple and not take a detour left and right.
Also, a rookie mistake is often people will try to fix just not well thought out musical compositions with clever sound design. And usually that just doesn't work. Most of the time it's the simple things that people gravitate to. So we actually haven't flipped this particular sample ourselves, which is weird because usually we always do. But when we decided to do a sample breakdown of this particular sample, I told my brother, hey, send me over the project and let me see what I can put together in 20-30 minutes, which was the time before he would arrive here so we can start filming. And this is what I came up with. Kept it simple for the verse, left a lot of space for an artist, which is always good. Like I said, usually I would probably put a little more effort into this than just adding drums and an 808. But yeah, I think you get the point. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and were able to take something away from it. As always, if you're into those types of samples, make sure you check out DopeBoyKids.com. There's 3 Horn Anthems packs available right now. Volume 4 is pretty much finished, but yeah, we're just waiting for the right time to drop it. Volume 4 is done as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, liking, commenting and all that, and we'll make sure to keep those sample breakdowns coming. Thank you very much. Peace.